Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
You're listening to the Telltale Channel. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check out my Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
Charlie Kirk shows up to Cambridge and debates a bunch of people, fascinatingly. I want to listen to it and add a little bit of context.
But, so just to clarify, you believe that this is in the Bible, this is laid out in the Bible, that man shall not sleep with man, and so therefore...
Well, it's also repeated throughout the New Testament as well. In the book of Matthew, Jesus reaffirms the biblical standard for marriage.
No. This guy was saying, he says it's repeated throughout the New Testament as well, and it's talking about Matthew or whatever. I think that verse in Matthew basically says a man shall cleave to his wife and they'll become one flesh or whatever other thing. It's not saying that. That's not an anti-gay verse. That's describing something that was common back then. But by the way, marriage wasn't even a thing in Bible times. Like in the New Testament, marriage didn't exist. Let's just keep listening. I have a lot to say about this, but we'll get there.
Well, in the book of Matthew, Jesus reaffirms the biblical standard for marriage.
Okay, so I'm going to make two very, very quick points. So the first, so if we look at the Old Testament in isolation, just to start off with as an example. So let's look at Exodus 35:2. Which suggests that if you work on the Sabbath, you should be put to death. If you look at Leviticus 11:7, it suggests that if you have pork, you should be put to death.
And the reason he's bringing this up is because the anti-gay stuff is right there next to those verses. It's right in there. There isn't like a separation of any sort or whatever. It's in there. So if you eat pork, you cannot take the advice from the Old Testament about not being gay. It is morally inconsistent. It's nonsense. And it's obvious that you're just looking for a reason to hate gay people at that point. That's it. And Charlie Kirk is going to contest it and say, well, that's totally different because we don't live under those laws anymore. Yeah, exactly. That's the point.
Put to death. Let me finish. I'll be done. If you plant two crops side by side, you should be stoned by your entire village.
No wearing cotton and linen blends. No eating shellfish.
If you wear a suit, which you are wearing now, that contains two different fibers intertwined into the same jacket, you should be burnt at the stake by your own mother. Now, following that rationale, in Leviticus 18:22, and it states that man shall not sleep with man, why aren't we burning ourselves at the stake as well? Why aren't we stoning ourselves to death?
It's an interesting approach to it. Now Charlie Kirk has to invalidate the usefulness of those verses, invalidate the fact that the Bible says that in the Old Testament, or he has to defend burning people at the stake. That's a really interesting rhetorical strategy. I like that a lot. That's underrated.
Do you care to address my main contention that Christ affirmed biblical
Oh, he's just going to ignore it. Of course.
Marriage in the book of Matthew? And can you tell me the difference between the ceremonial, the moral, and the ritual law? And then finally, also, tell me about Christianity, the difference between the new and the old covenant, or are you just going to cherry pick certain verses of ancient Israel that do not apply to new Christianity?
Look at that. Sounds like it's completely irrelevant then, huh? The Old Testament doesn't matter. Means nothing, right? To Christians? Is that what he's saying? Is that the position that he holds? That's what it sounds like. The fact is, the Bible talks about gay anything in any context in a total of 6 verses. Out of 32,000 verses, only in 6. Okay? One of them was the one they just mentioned. Man shall not lie with man. It's an abomination, something, something or other. The old law. Next to, you won't eat pork or shellfish. You won't wear cotton and linen blends. It's irrelevant for modern day Christians because Jesus fulfilled the law. He didn't erase it. He said, not one jot or tittle shall blah, 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 whatever. He fulfilled it when he died. So we don't follow the old law. It's irrelevant. Okay, that was verse number 1. Verse 2 is about Sodom and Gomorrah. But Sodom and Gomorrah were not destroyed because of gay anything. They were destroyed because of their ill treatment of the poor, quote unquote, according to the book of Ezekiel, because of how they treated their guests specifically. They treated people like trying to take advantage of people when they walked in. That's why they were destroyed. So that one is nullified too. It's completely pointless. I think there's one more Old Testament verse that's, mixed up in the old law. I don't remember. What are the other? Genesis 19, 1-11, Sodom and Gomorrah. Leviticus 18:22, irrelevant now because it's, because Jesus fulfilled the law. Leviticus 20:13, the same thing. It was just part of the old law. I was just elaborating on it. So those 3 verses are irrelevant. Now, there are 3 New Testament verses that talk about it. 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10. 1 Timothy 1, 9, and 10, and Romans 1, 26-27. 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10 are basically quoting each other, and they're not quoting each other. They're about the same thing, and they're irrelevant because it's not actually about being gay at all. It's very obviously misinterpreted, which is why people never jump to 1 Timothy 1, 9, and 10 when they're justifying hating gay people. It's always Romans 1:26, because that's the one that has the highest chance of landing with anybody. 1 Corinthians 6, 9, and 10, do you know that wrongdoers will not inherit the kingdom of God, neither the sexually immoral nor men who have sex with men? However, the word isn't men who have sex with men. That's not the translation. The word is malakoi and arsenokoitai, which are something called hapax legomenon, which means they were only ever used once anywhere in any old literature. I think this is the first instance of us ever finding those words in any literature, arsenokoitai and malakoi. We don't actually know what it means, but it was some kind of slang for something. But again, since it's hotly debated and nobody knows exactly, they just kind of whatever, they move on, talk about something different. 1 Timothy 9 and 10, again, uses the term arsenokoitai, which may refer to exploitation, not general homosexuality. The one that Christians always have to go to, the one verse out of the other 32,000 verses that they view as a, dead to rights, nail in coffin verse about gay people, is Romans 1:26-27. God gave them up to degrading passions. Their women exchanged natural intercourse for unnatural, and in the same way also the men. But actually, if you look at what actual Bible scholars say about this verse, you will find that the actual Bible scholars, not Owen Morgan, I don't know these languages, scholars say it was talking about idolatry, not about men laying with men. It was a translation thing. And, when the King James Version was being translated, when other Bible translations were coming along, they already had this idea in their head about what it said or what it should say or what they felt it should say because of their culture or whatever at the time. And they wrote some things into it. They retrofitted the Bible with the ideas and beliefs that they already had when they were writing this stuff. It was about idolatry, not about being gay. So really, there are no solid verses in the Bible that are opposed to gay people. It never outright condemns homosexuality in clear, unambiguous terms. Jesus never said, you will not get married to men. He never even said you will not be in a relationship with a man, a long-term gay relationship. He never said that, never even implied it. Never came close to saying anything like that. And guess what? Gay people have been around a long time, since day one. About 10% of the population, give or take, is LGBT, I believe. So why didn't Jesus address it? Why didn't he bring it up? Why didn't he say a single fucking word about it? Because it was irrelevant. Nobody gave a shit. Do you want to know the real truth about the culture at the time? What they really had a problem with back then? Like the far-right, conservative, traditionalist nutcases of the era. What they really had an issue with wasn't say gex, if you will. It was bottoms. Being the passive participant in a situation. Gay or straight. It was bottoms. Tops were not viewed as gay, no matter what it was that they were doing. Anyway, the point is that it's very painfully, blatantly, glaringly obvious when people like Charlie Kirk come out here and try to, speak out against being gay, when they use a single misinterpreted, or at the very least, hotly debated verse, one out of 32,000 in the Bible. Now, don't get me wrong. The Bible is absolutely used for bigotry and hate, and it makes it easy. It's easy to be vile and hateful and use the Bible as the basis. It absolutely is. But a lot of the hateful and bigoted stuff that you find in the Bible is there because it was retrofitted, not because it was original. That's my point.
Verses of ancient Israel that do not apply to new Christianity.
No, fair. I completely agree. So we'll look at 2 points then. So firstly, if we look
So he just nullified the first 3 verses out of 32,000. Let's hit the next 3.
at the Old Testament, we can see the kind of inconsistencies there. We've already touched upon that, right? That makes sense. Secondly, you mentioned the point of Jesus and Christ. He never mentioned anything to do with homosexuality
Nope.
at all.
Well, hold on a
Nowhere in
second.
the
No,
Bible.
he affirmed biblical marriage.
No, he didn't. Marriage didn't exist. He was talking about it was in a parable. By the way, the shit that I just said about the Bible and the verses and everything, again, none of that came from me. Okay, I didn't research this and get an interlinear version of the Bible. Well, I did, but I'm not translating any of the. I don't speak Greek or Aramaic or Hebrew or any of that. I'm getting this from scholars who know the information, particularly Bart Ehrman, Richard Carrier, and a number of others. Even far-right Christian nutcase scholars will admit to pretty much all of this. Matthew 19:4-6. Have you not read that the one who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. Context: Pharisees came to test Jesus by asking, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? It was about divorce. The answer is no, biblically. But the Pharisees, oh God, there's so much interesting history here, so much interesting biblical history. The Pharisees were kind of a sect of Judaism that believed that Moses didn't just bring down the Old Testament, like the old laws, the 613 commandments. He didn't just bring those down. He also brought with him basically oral commandments. He brought culture with him. So to be one of God's people, you had to practice God's culture. And that meant interpreting the Old Testament, or interpreting the old laws specifically, the way that Jewish leaders interpreted them. They had the authority to say what God wanted and expected because they were God's chosen people. And they're the arbiters, they're the judges, they'll tell you. Fascinatingly, that's actually the Catholic Church's justification for doing what they do. They say that God passed down Christian culture through the generations. And a lot of the stuff Catholics do, praying the rosary beads or Hail Marys or whatever, confession, none of that's in the Bible. But that's Christian, quote unquote, because Catholics have the culture of Christianity passed down by God through the generations. Anyway, that's the perspective of the Pharisees, is the point. After the temple was destroyed for the second time in 70 CE, I think, the Pharisees, that is, decided to write down the oral commandments, write down the expectations and the cultural nuances and things for future generations in case there was some crazy destruction of all of their culture and everything. And those are now the Jewish holy texts beyond the Old Testament. That's what we know as the holy texts. Because the Pharisees are modern day Jews. The Pharisaical movement, the Pharisees, also known as the rabbinic movement, rabbinic Judaism. So anyway, the Pharisees are the arbiters of God's word. They determine how it's interpreted because they passed God's culture down through the ages. So they come to Jesus and they say, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any reason? They're testing him. They're trying to find out if he's going to follow along with them and let them dictate what God's law is, if he's going to cede authority to them. He responds by quoting Genesis 1:27 and Genesis 2:24, grounding his answer in creation and God's original intent for marriage, which is what God has joined together, let no one separate. Again, marriage did not exist in its current context at the time. It just didn't. Check out Bart Ehrman's opinion on this subject. His primary focus is defending the sanctity and permanence of marriage, not issuing a policy on who is eligible to marry, is the bottom line. So what Charlie Kirk is saying here, completely unrelated. Doesn't matter. The Matthew verse has nothing to do with anything. This is called grasping at straws.
Sexuality at all.
Well, hold on a second. No, he affirmed biblical marriage as one man and one woman. He said a man shall leave his
Romans,
father's
right?
house.
In the New Testament.
No, in Matthew, that is not correct. I believe
In the New Testament.
In the New Testament. Well, Romans is also in the New Testament. Secondly, in Romans 1, the Apostle Paul talks negatively about homosexuality.
No. He's talking about idolatry, not about homosexuality, but whatever. I don't doubt that they didn't like gay people at the time. Like I said, they didn't like bottoms, but they didn't explicitly say that they don't like bottoms in the Bible. And if it's important enough, you'd think God would make sure that one kind of slipped through, right? Kind of made it into the Bible a little bit more explicitly than it is. Wouldn't put it in hapax legomenon form.
About homosexuality explicitly. Also, homosexuality is repeated in the book of Titus and in the book of Jude.
He has no fucking clue what he's talking about.
As not being favorable as the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. Not even Tom.
No, I think he probably meant in Corinthians and Timothy. He's just spouting off random Bible books.
Homosexuality is repeated in the book of Titus and in the book of Jude as not being favorable as the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's just not true.
Even talking about the Old Testament verses. There are 3 types of the 613 Levitical laws. And you of course, in your own way, cherry pick some of them. We do not live under the ceremonial. We do not live under the ritual. But we do live under the moral. There's only 10 of the moral that we as Christians believe we're bound.
Oh, give it a fucking break, man. Yeah. Only 10 of the moral laws that Christians are bound to. And what are those 10 exactly? List them for me, Charlie. You shall not work on the Sabbath day. Is that one of the 10 that we follow? What are some of the other ones? Right, number 1. I think number 1 isn't that the one that contradicts the First Amendment? The first commandment contradicts the First Amendment. You shall have no other gods before me. And the First Amendment is you can practice religion however you want. Number 2, you shall not make idols. We follow that? Somebody better say something to Donald Trump because he literally had a golden statue of himself. If anybody remembers that. Again, I don't want to go down rabbit holes or anything, but I'll let this play while I continue reading these 10 commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain. Remember the Sabbath day, keep it holy. I'm still not sure how any of these are relevant to today. Honor your father and your mother. Okay, that's just good advice that people have had since time immemorial. You shall not murder. Again, every single culture had this rule. We didn't need the Bible to tell us this. You shall not commit adultery. That shouldn't be a commandment, but okay, good advice, I suppose. Again, something that I didn't need the 10 commandments for. Every culture in history said it. Oh, this video finished. Let me pull up another statue from Donald Trump here. This goat, literally made of money with golden horns, looks like. At Mar-a-Lago, bizarre golden-hoofed goat idol is on display. The idol is wrapped in Trump $100 bills that say, "In Trump we trust," replacing God with Trump. The idol's base says, "I love you," along with Trump's signature. So anyway, I'll leave that up while I continue with the 10 commandments here. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. Again, good advice. Anybody could have given that. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. Good advice. Don't lie. You shall not covet. Well, that one is kind of the basis of our entire economic system, isn't it? Capitalism. You can either be a Christian or a capitalist / American / constitutionalist or whatever. They're incompatible with each other. Well, with Charlie Kirk's understanding of Christianity and the Constitution and the values that we hold as a society, they're incompatible. But somehow Charlie Kirk manages to wind it all up together, bizarrely.
To some believe 9, which of course is the Decalogue. And so none of those that you mentioned we as Christians believe that we live under. However, we do look at what Christ articulated as the biblical standard of marriage. And we can also look to church tradition for this as well. And the church has had a tradition for well over 2,000 years.
Again, this is going back to how the church is the arbiter of what's right because God has made sure that the tradition is carried through the generations. It's the same basis for the Pharisees' power, the claim that they're in power, so they deserve it. That's pretty much it. And the Catholics say the same thing.
Even myself as a Protestant acknowledges that tradition is marriage between one man and one woman.
And fair point. But, okay, say we put aside the Old Testament for now.
I mean, Martin Luther, the founder of Protestantism, one could argue, fought against church tradition. I can't believe that he's even saying this as a Protestant. Are you serious? Church tradition is irrelevant when it comes to, like, biblical whatever, according to the whole Protestant split, like the whole reason it split in the first place.
We'll put that aside and the inconsistencies there. We'll look purely at the New Testament, following your rationale, okay? Now, when you say that Christ lays specifically, and the New Testament states specifically that man shall not sleep with man, I'd like to point out a linguistic error on that point.
I did not say that. I said the biblical marriage was affirmed, and then Romans 1 did talk negatively about the action of homosexuality.
But ultimately, it's a fact. That affirmation comes from...
Well, he actually mentioned the other two verses that talk about it too, Titus and Jude, except what he meant to say was Corinthians and Timothy. But, you know, he's just not all there or something.
8 lines in there that suggest that man shall not sleep with man.
Yes, of course, yes. The Old Testament and New Testament harmonize one another, but Christ brought it to a different level, a different covenant, and a different moral teaching. It wasn't just enough to say that you shall, man shall strike eye for eye, it's that you shall turn the other cheek, that you shall love your enemy. Christ's moral standard was much more even elevated than that of the...
The fuck are you talking about? You think Jesus had more moral rules than the Jewish people? What are you smoking? You know why Christianity spread as quickly and as far as it did? So it was the lazy man's religion. At the time, Judaism was pretty popular in that little region, but there were other religions in the area too. You know, pagan religions, quote unquote, worshipped all kinds of different gods. And there were all kinds of rules you had to follow. You had to get the tip of your dicks cut off in certain religions. You had to specifically not work on certain days, limiting the amount of money or resources that you can accrue. You had to follow all kinds of ridiculous rules, and not just for Judaism. Again, it was for others. Christianity comes along, and Jesus says, all you got to do is believe, and you'll be saved. Accept God's message, and you'll be saved. And people are like, yeah, I can do that. 100%, I'm all in. And it spread like wildfire because it was just easy. So by no stretch of the imagination did Jesus, what was it he said? Elevate it and make it more difficult or moral or something?
Turn the other cheek, that you shall love your enemy. Christ's moral standard was much more even elevated than that of the Israelites and the Hebrews.
I'm going to ask you whose Bible, okay? Now, your Bible that you use currently is written in the English language, right? Correct?
Yeah, the King James Version, yes, thanks to Tyndale.
Yeah, well, exactly, it's written in...
No, this is going back to tradition, right? He's going to have an answer to this. King James was divinely sanctioned to write the Bible himself. First name King, last name James. Supposed to sit there at a table and write it all. And he wrote it all. And just like that, we now have a Bible. And every word, every comma, and every space in it is correct. Is that what he's going to tell me? Appointed. Yeah, appointed might be the right word. I meant more like ordered, though, not just appointed. Maybe anointed? I don't know.
English language, which in itself is only, say, 500 years old. Now, but the Christianity in itself, say, is 2,000 years old or even older, yeah? Correct? Now, which means that the Bible was originally written not in English, but in ancient
Koine Greek.
Huh?
Yeah, Koine Greek, yes.
In Koine Greek.
Koine Greek.
Yeah, correct. Now, if we look at the Greek terminology of man...
Yes, and Jesus spoke Aramaic. You could translate...
Yep, Jesus spoke Aramaic, that's correct.
...things, you acknowledge that.
Well, we translate things, but translations are linguistically ambiguous. As a former classicist, I know that language can't be translated directly. So, for example, if we look at the translation of certain words into man, so I've got 2 words here. So I've got malakoi, which means essentially soft, which isn't necessarily directly saying a gay man. And then
he's referring to what we talked about a minute ago. Arsenokoitai is the other, right?
Got, oh God, how do I say that?
Arsenokoitai.
Arsenokoitai, which essentially means prostitutes.
Yeah, you did a good job with it. And actually, no, it means... man bed is actually, yeah, it's just hard to know exactly, but people have mostly kind of surmised that it meant passive participant, which could mean prostitute, which could mean bottoms. It's just ambiguous because it's a hapax legomenon.
Now, if we look at things linguistically, we can pick apart the Bible and say that actually it wasn't saying man shall not sleep with man, it's saying man shall not sleep with prostitutes, which is an entirely different linguistic thing.
I'm not even getting into Leviticus, though.
But no,
my contention is completely New Testament.
Brother, he was talking about the New Testament. He is so fucking stupid. I'm sorry, I'm not that guy. I'm not always bagging on people. But he's not listening. He's got gummy bears in his ears or something. He's refusing to see the truth in front of him. Okay, the Bible is not as anti-gay as Charlie Kirk wants to make out. Christians are anti-gay. Christianity is anti-gay. You could say it's a tradition in the church or whatever, but the Bible doesn't really translate out. Certainly not as hard anti-gay as he is trying to portray.
This isn't Leviticus.
Well, but you said man shall not speak another man. So you're talking about Romans.
Well, okay, these words are used throughout the
Right, well,
Bible,
actually, in Romans 1, it was actually women sleeping with women. So you got your verses wrong. In Romans 1, Paul is...
No, he said, yeah, it mentions women sleeping with women and men sleeping with men, but not exactly. Again, words are a little bit sticky there because they're hapax legomena. They're words that we had never read before, and they don't... It's not the word for gay. There was a word for gay. It's not in there.
Prophesying about the end of the world, and he's saying that in the end times, woman will like with woman like, and man will, I think it might say man will like, men like. You have to get the verses specifically, but it is agreed upon, and you can agree. This is why tradition is important, and I even say this as a Protestant, is that we believe that Scripture is very important, but also look to tradition.
Oh my God. He's making the Catholic argument. Are you serious? When you are debating yourself out of your own set of beliefs.
Is very important, but also look to tradition. Church tradition has had an unbroken chain affirming matrimony, holy matrimony being one man, one woman.
Yeah, you're talking about the Catholic Church, right? The Catholics do?
One, even as a non-Catholic, I'm glad that Pope Leo has reaffirmed in the last couple of days. And so I'm not even sure your contention, your point. Are you saying that the Bible doesn't affirm marriage as one man, one woman? Or are you saying church tradition doesn't affirm marriage one man, one woman?
The Bible doesn't affirm.
Okay,
That clearly doesn't affirm.
That is complete nonsense.
It doesn't. Yeah, the Bible is not overtly anti-gay. Yeah, there were words for gay, and it isn't in the New Testament.
It's a linguistic error, and it's debated.
But Christ our Lord, which is the standard, he affirms this idea that you will leave your father's home. Going back to Genesis 12 and this idea of Abraham leaving his father's home, and you will...
Yeah, it was about marriage. It was about whether you should be allowed to get divorced. They were trying to catch him up.
Cleave to your wife. That it'll be called one. In fact, this idea of a new creation, which is something that is then used by the Apostle Paul to describe the Church of Christ and the bride of the church, and the church being the bride of Christ.
Again, marriage didn't exist the way that we understand it, not even close.
With Jesus. So I'm not even sure your contention. It is.
Yeah, but you're just avoiding my point. I'm saying the Bible that we have today is 100% a translation, and a translation
I acknowledge that.
Ambiguous.
And well, hold on. But what about specifically in Matthew or in the book of Romans? And but in order for you to be correct, you mean the church fathers translated it wrong when they were within like 50 years of this?
No, they didn't. That's the thing. They didn't. King James had it commissioned in the 1700s, I think, or whenever, 1600s, 15, and they got it wrong then, and it just kept getting passed down incorrect. The Schofield Reference Bible in the 1800s, I think, got a whole bunch of wrong. But yeah, I mean, the 50 years after Jesus, I think, is when some of the first Gospels were written down. The book of John, I think, was written in the year 110 BCE, or BC, I'm sorry. The book of John was written in 110 CE. Book of Revelation, 110 to 150, somewhere in there. So, yeah, no, it wasn't messed up by them. It was messed up by modern people, more modern than that, at least.
In order for your contention to be correct, you have to say that the early church fathers that wrote the early letters to the church, they were translating it wrong. And
No, nobody has to say that. Just making this shit up.
The tradition they established was wrong. So by then we can lean on tradition and scripture. So when you get tradition plus scripture, you get something that is authentic, that is real, and that is verifiable.
Then why aren't you Catholic?
Highlighted that tradition does not align with scripture. We've gone back thousands of years to ancient Mesopotamia.
But understand, but at the time they all spoke Greek, they wrote Greek, and they spoke Aramaic. So
Yeah, you're talking about 2,000 years ago? Yeah, people spoke Greek and all of that. That's not from 2,000 years ago. That's the point, Charlie. My God.
example, when they were writing the early Gospels, the synoptic Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, They were obviously writing in Greek. They knew that language. So in Matthew, when they were writing Greek, and then the early church fathers knew Greek and adopted that as church tradition, and we have a 2,000 unbroken chain, I think you would irrefutably say that it was the teachings of Christ for one man and one woman. Because the church tradition has been unbroken for 2,000 years, and they derived it from Scripture of that original language.
Yeah, why aren't you Catholic? This is just an argument for being Catholic.
You can't argue that. That makes sense. I mean, if we agree to disagree, then why don't we look at biology?
So you know better than the church fathers?
No, I don't.
You know better than what, Pope Leo, Charlie, is what you're saying?
I'm not saying I know better than the church fathers. What I'm saying is, linguistically, there is undeniably an error. Regardless of what you say, that is
Our lens, maybe, but not from the people when they were making these traditions.
I agree. They may have got that right, but that...
Oh my God, dude. He is such a fucking weasel. Here's the thing that's interesting about this to me. We know that he's wrong, and we know how he's wrong. Like me and like you guys as viewers. Think about how he's framing this. He probably knows he's wrong too. And he's desperately like flopping around like a fish out of water, trying to come up with any argument he possibly can. And the argument that he's landed on is it's traditional. That's just what Christianity does. Doesn't really matter. It's not in the Bible. And Jesus said one man, one woman. Again, doesn't really matter. He was talking about marriage and not getting divorced specifically. If you notice, he didn't focus in on any of the other verses. And that's because he doesn't know what they are. He thought it was in Jude and Titus. Anyway, the dude's just a joke all the way down. And it's just, I think he's one of the most influential jokes in the country, sadly. But yeah, tell me what you think about it in the comments. Fascinating.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
There's this guy, this dude right here, claims to own a company where he will hire people and pay people to protest for you. You being Elon Musk. Like Elon Musk would come around and pay protesters. It's actually not true at all. It is this guy trying to establish the idea that the left pays protesters. And he, you know, everybody knows he's right wing. He has a right wing footprint. So he is making himself a target, making himself, you know, the clown and saying, yeah, I run this company where I hire people to protest. And he comes on these shows, One American News Network, Newsmax, and he just like gets beaten up by the hosts, and that's his whole bit.
And bring in someone who knows a little bit about this subject. Let's welcome in now the CEO and founder of Crowds on Demand, the largest orchestrator of paid protests in the country. His name is Adam Swart. Adam, first of all, welcome to the briefing.
Ed, thanks so much for having me on.
Okay, I feel like is he like one of those lizard people that's like crammed himself into human skin? You guys ever seen Men in Black? You know that one character that wanted sugar or something? Remember him? The hell's his name? Sugar character, Men in Black. Oh God, I can't play it without getting hit with copyright, right?
Edgar, what on earth was that?
Oh, Edgar is his name.
Sugar. I've never seen Sugar do that.
Give me sugar.
I feel like he's just an alien that is wearing this dude's skin like a suit.
In water.
Hang on, let me just. You know, okay, they're not going to show him coming out of his skin. I was hoping they'd show that, but anyway, that's what this guy reminds me of.
Who do you think is behind? Let's start with the Tesla protests. Are they really protests? Are they orchestrated? Elon's asking the question, who's funding all this?
Who is funding people protesting Elon Musk going in and violating the Constitution and like going in with guns, with sheriffs and forcing people to leave at gunpoint and plugging computers into the system and downloading like people's social security information and yeah, who's protesting it? Who is paying people to protest that? Nobody in their right mind could protest that, right?
I think you first have to follow the money.
What fucking money?
And if you think about it, there have been many, many attempts by short sellers, that's people who make money when the stock goes down, to try to take down Elon Musk. Now they see an opportunity. These
Okay. All right. So let's just kind of analyze this situation for a second and like really think it through. This guy says people are betting on stock to go down, on Tesla stock to go down, right? So they get somebody to loan them a share of Tesla. They sell the share. And then in a year, when you're supposed to pay the share back, you buy the share back at market price and you give it back to the person. The assumption is if the share dropped by enough, then you're going to earn the difference between what you sold it at just now from what you bought it at a year ago. That's short selling. And people can make like a lot of money doing this, or they can lose a lot of money doing this. But think about what it would take to organize a protest like what happened. The hands-off protests, I believe, was one of the biggest ones. Okay, it looks like 3 to 5 million people participated in the hands-off protests across the U.S., is what I'm seeing. Let's take the low number of 3 million people, okay? And these people that we're watching right now, they have claimed in the past, Trump supporters have claimed George Soros is paying people basically $2,000 per day to protest. So $2,000 times 3 million people times 2 different protests, 2 days, right? How much money is that? That's is that $12 billion? I think that's $12 billion. You think that somebody could spend $12 billion? Who has that much money? George Soros, your big boogeyman, is only worth like $4 billion. Trump is only worth like $4 billion. The only people that could afford something like that are Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or something. And it would be noticed. If people were being paid to protest, there would be contracts all over the place that showed up, that people would be posting all over the internet, offers that were made to them by right-wingers when they aren't right-wingers. So they're revealing this stuff. It would be everywhere, impossible to miss. Instead, we have some random dude claiming to be a part of some random industry that there's no evidence even exists. I'll tell you what the right does. They don't hire protesters to go out there and protest. You know what they do? Specifically Christian nationalists. They will hire 15 people. They don't even need to hire them. They'll get this little group of people together, 15, 20, 30, 50 people, and they will go to every school board across the country that they can get to within a very short span of time and pretend to be parents there. Just a few people. And they'll start screaming that their children are being transed and that there are litter boxes in the classroom. They'll go to the next one and they'll do it again. And the money isn't going to paying individuals to be out in the street on the right. The money is going toward funding political campaigns oppositional to your enemies, basically. It's going toward making a lot of really loud noise with a very small group of people to make it seem like there's more support than it actually has. These people just cannot deal with the fact that they're unpopular. Elon Musk specifically and Donald Trump. They cannot deal with the fact that they're unpopular. You're just not liked. If you want to be liked, then do things that are likable. Not important, but Newsmax sells a singing fish of Donald Trump called Trumpy Trout. The contempt Republicans have for their own voters astounds me. Oh my God, Trumpy Trout? Oh my God, dude, it's so stupid. Oh my God, no. No. This has got to be a joke, right?
A message.
I don't think this is a joke. I think this is 100% real. Please don't give me a copyright strike.
A message from the 45th President of the United Ponds of America.
The United Ponds of America, zing.
Let's make fishing great again, okay?
He's here, everyone's favorite fish, Trumpy Trout.
No one has ever seen a fish like me.
Trumpy Trout is an animatronic talking fish with a big personality.
I am the hugely bigliest fish in the pond.
Watch his fins flap and his large mouth move as he makes speech after speech in high-fidelity sounds.
A high-fidelity sound. It is so fucking stupid. This is embarrassing. I don't understand how people can like go out there with a straight face and like advertise this or promote this or even buy this. It is an embarrassment. Like, I would think that people would want to downplay how fucking stupid Donald Trump is. The shit that this trout is saying is really, really stupid.
Hugely, bigliest fish in the pond.
Why are they calling attention to that? I would be embarrassed by it.
Fidelity sound.
Some bass, a bad fish, crazy fish, criminal fish, and druggy fish. But some bass are good fish, and I only love some of them.
Mounted
So the point is that it's just speaking complete nonsense. That is insane.
to your wall or use the built-in stand to display him proudly on your desk. Now you'll never miss a Trumpy Trout rally.
I'm building a new pond, and the bass will pay for it.
Set him to motion activated to surprise his fans. Fans.
My fins are big. I have the biggest fins. No fish have fins like me.
Or turn him on and let his inspiring words delight the crowd.
Inspiring words? Are you kidding me right now?
All the fish love Trumpy. They just love me.
Catch Trumpy Trout for yourself or someone you love.
Oh, they can try, but they can't. They just can't.
Treat yourself to this limited edition Trumpy Trout for just $59.99. It comes with your official Make Fishing Great Again certificate of authenticity. Order right now and we'll instantly upgrade you to the deluxe version with desktop stand and Trumpy Trout jingle free.
Oh my god, dude. A desktop stand? Are you serious?
The greatest trout without a doubt, the biggest fish.
Anyway, wow. I did not know that existed. Thank you for letting me know.
People have lost billions and billions betting against Elon Musk over the past 10 plus years.
All right, so he's saying people are betting that Elon Musk is going to fail and he's not failing. So they're paying $12 billion to protesters to try to make Tesla stock go down. Short selling works on pretty specific timeframes, to my understanding. It has to be like within a year. So you're telling me that they're trying to decrease Tesla stock so that they can pay back less money when the year mark comes around. Is that what you're telling me? Are they going to make $12 billion off of it? Off of short selling? I doubt it. You're trying to tell me that they sunk $12 billion in? You'd have to sink a lot more than that in to make those $12 billion back. It's absurd at its face.
That he has led Tesla. They see an opportunity now with Musk's involvement with the Trump administration to finally deal a deadly blow to Tesla through boycotts and now through political violence.
Who the f*** is they? Who are you talking about? Are they in the room with us right now? Point them out. He thinks that some ambiguous, secretive they is in the background trying to make Elon Musk fail. What? Because they don't like him? Why? What would the point be? Like, if Tesla's going to succeed, invest in it. If it's not going to succeed or you don't like it, don't invest in it. See how simple that is? You don't have to pay $12 billion to pay protesters and then even more money to cover that fact up, to hide it from everybody.
To Tesla through boycotts and now through political violence, potentially an intimidation. And I suspect if you follow the money, a lot of the organization is coming from people with money on the line.
Oh my God.
In regards to Tesla.
So he thinks that people are betting for Tesla to fail, and they're paying protesters to make it fail now. Are you kidding me with this? There are way easier ways to make a shitload of money with $12 billion. You can multiply $12 billion a lot easier than giving it to protesters. These people are just shamelessly full of shit. Here's another appearance. We're going to go back to that one because there's more on that. Here's another appearance. This one is on Newsmax, I believe. Or no, this one is on One America News. The previous one that we're going to come back to, that's on Newsmax. Listen to this One America News one.
I don't know how you sleep at night. I would not do your job. I do not like it. So people can literally call your company and get a bunch of paid actors, if you will, to stand up there, hold signs, and scream on the street corner because that's what your company does.
No.
Number one, it's not actors. We're providing activists who are truly engaged with the cause, right?
But are they? I just showed you a video of a guy going, I don't even know why I'm here. They got signs and they got sheets and they said, go say this and talk to cameras and hold signs.
It's complete bullshit. There's famously, let me try to think about how to phrase this. Back in 1902's an old document, the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, that was like this anti-Semitic document. It claimed to be like minutes from meetings of like Jewish leaders and their plan for world domination. It's fictitious. It was written by some random people, not Jewish people at all. But the claim was that it was found on a dead Jewish soldier. It was found on the ground or whatever. 100 years later, in 2016, there were protests against Donald Trump and a bunch of other stuff. And what did they claim? Specifically BLM protests and stuff. What did they claim? The right, I mean, Donald Trump and others, they claimed that George Soros was paying these people between $1,500 and $3,000, I think, per night. And the proof, they found this contract on some dude that was arrested. And there's even like, you can even look up a picture of this supposed contract that they found. It's just nonsense. It's all nonsense, all the way down. It's the same recycled propagandistic lies that they've been recycling since the 1900s, even earlier. Anyway, so this guy is just, I guess he's just trying to convince people of this fact and establish the fact or the fictitious belief that there are companies that will just pay you to protest. Give it a rest.
Challenging for them to get sufficient turnout to a lot of these events, compensating people, just like, Dan, you're compensated for hosting your program. These are your real views on this program, but you're compensated.
I am, but I don't pay my viewers to watch me. So I love the fact that I can go on the street corner and say whatever the hell I want, a grievance against my government, or call my neighbor or whatever I want, because that's America. But I don't like that companies try to stage it all and hire people and set it up. It should be organic. The American people should want to come out, get on their soapbox, my show, I'm talking. They should come out.
What a fucking douchebag.
And want to gather together and say, here's the cause I'm sticking up for. But you see, guys like you and the bureaucrats and the folks in D.C. love stirring up the pot between us Americans. And so you pay people to do this and you make a scene look bigger than it really is. You make an issue bigger than it truly is. And so I don't like your business. I'm going to end it there, but I appreciate you coming back on.
Absolute nonsense. The bottom line is we see what billionaires spend their money on, like the Koch brothers and stuff, and it's not protests. They don't pay people to protest. It's nonsense. It would cost way too much money. They buy political campaigns and they organize small groups to go around the country to abortion clinics and stand outside and act like rabid dogs for like hours every day because they have nothing better to do. It's just a little group of like 50 people. A while back, under Biden, I believe, Merrick Garland wrote a letter, an open letter, I think, basically saying that they were going to start charging people with domestic terrorism if they kept showing up at these school board meetings and doing this, like acting, threatening people. They were waiting in the parking lot and at night and cornering the city council members, the school board members, and getting in their face and punching them and stuff like that. And he said they were going to file domestic terrorism charges if they didn't stop it. And it stopped like that because it was like 10 people that were going around to like every school board meeting, every city council meeting that they could possibly get to. They spend like a month hitting these one after another after another. We don't need, like, if you see a large group of people, like tens of thousands, they're not being paid to be there. Let's continue with this dude on this one channel here with this dude.
An opportunity now with Musk's involvement with the Trump administration to finally deal a deadly blow to Tesla through boycotts and now through political violence, potentially an intimidation. And I suspect if you follow the money, a lot of the organization is coming from people with money on the line in regards to Tesla.
$12 billion of money completely unaccounted for like that. Like there's no sign whatsoever that anybody has been paid in protests. Not a single person comes out of the woodwork and shows these papers, like these contracts, whatever, or more specifically, not more than a single person. There isn't more than one example of a contract out of the millions of people supposedly paid by George Soros or whoever to protest. Give it a rest. Like, nobody wants stocks to go down except for short sellers, I guess. And I believe that short selling is illegal. I could be wrong. It's definitely frowned upon. I think hedge funds do it.
Interesting. Hadn't thought of that angle. So you're suggesting the short sellers and people who don't follow Wall Street closely, who are betting that Tesla stock would go down. In recent years, it's gone way up, and those short sellers have lost a lot of money. Now the stock has been coming down amid the protests and other things, and maybe they're recouping some of their losses. Interesting, but let's connect it to
they're recouping some of their losses by paying $12 billion to protesters and finding some way to hide it from public view completely. Totally.
the politics, because this person on X was saying, number one, that it's going on in congressional districts that are contested. And number two, in that same thread on X, they put up a picture of your profile saying, ask this guy if he's involved. So given your organization's work, you say that you put together protests and whatnot. What do you know? What are you doing, if anything, on this?
So he's a right-wing supposed organizer of protests. Again, the right is not organizing protests like that. They hire like 50 people at most to go around and make a big, make loud noise.
We're not involved in this matter. First of all, our organization only undertakes legal protests.
Okay.
So anything that would involve any sort of law breaking, and particularly any sort of violence, would in no way be something that we condone or do. It's honestly a sad fact that the modern left is not about ideas or tolerance.
Give it a fucking break. Are you kidding me right now? Really? You think the left isn't about tolerance or ideas? There used to be some degree of legitimacy, some grain of truth in there somewhere. I mean, not really, but people believed it. There isn't even a grain of truth in this anymore. The right has gone full fascist. And I appreciate that the rest of the world sees what's happening too, that we're not alone in all of this. And, Australia, for example, recognizes the fact that there is a full fascist takeover in the US.
It's just hostility, it's intimidation, it's political violence. These are tantrums by people who can't get their way by persuasion. They're using violence. And unfortunately, this is a case of what's called stochastic terrorism.
This is not an example of stochastic terrorism. Before he poisons a well with whatever the nonsense he's going to lay down. A good example of stochastic terrorism is Glenn Beck talking about the Tides Foundation. You probably haven't heard of them. I hadn't heard of them. But Glenn Beck used to be the Tucker Carlson of Fox News. Before Tucker Carlson, it was Bill O'Reilly, it was Glenn Beck, Megyn Kelly. They all had their moment at slot number one, basically. And Glenn Beck decided to go out on air once and make up a bunch of shit about the Tides Foundation. It's just some random organization that basically connects wealthy philanthropists with worthy causes. You can't, if you have $1 million you want to donate to something or somebody, you don't just go spend it on whatever. You need to do research. You need to make sure that this organization is legitimate, that they've been running for a while. You need to research them and make sure that there isn't some impropriety that's happened in the past, that they're not going to misuse your money. Look into their tax filings, because nonprofits still have to file taxes, so they don't pay taxes. They file their returns so that people can look at them publicly and see where their money went. So this organization, the Tides Foundation, does all of this research and lists these organizations that are worthy causes and trustworthy organizations to donate to. So they connect philanthropists who want to donate money to the organizations that need it. And Glenn Beck claimed all kinds of wild about them, being involved in some kind of scheme with Obama or some other insane, just off the wall, zero evidence. You know how Fox News does. And he demonized them to such a degree that one day the police pull this guy over, car full of weapons, and he tells the cops he's on his way to do like a mass attack on the Tides Foundation building. Stochastic terrorism is the idea that if you demonize somebody or something enough out of an audience of 100,000 people even, if 0.5% of your audience is insane enough to do something like that, like attack a building or try to assassinate somebody, if 0.5% is that crazy, and 1% of that group has the means to do so, they have the weapon or whatever on hand and the opportunity, statistically, you're likely going to get a terrorist attack on somebody. Trump demonizes Hillary Clinton enough, statistically, it's likely she's going to get some assassination attempts. So this guy is claiming the left uses stochastic terrorism to, like, attack people or whatever. Stochastic terrorism is the intentional, targeted, rhetorical attack of somebody with the intent to destroy them and the terrorist acts that result from it. So I guess I can't have standards anymore and not want to buy from Tesla, right? Or I'm a stochastic terrorist.
Yeah.
A case of what's called stochastic terrorism. That is to say that the people at the top are stoking the flames against Musk, and then the foot soldiers are actually starting the fires. And in this case, literally.
Absolute nonsense. He has no idea what that word means or how it's actually used or that term, but it doesn't even matter. He's a propagandist for the right. Absolutely disgusting, man. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. I can't believe that they actually got somebody to go out here and say all this.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
So I don't know if you guys follow Stu Peters at all, but he is like an Alex Jones almost, and he is out of his head, dude. Oh my God, this guy is crazy. And not only is he crazy, but I have watched his journey over the past few years go from an absolute unglued from reality nutcase to a full-blown self-avowed Nazi. I guess he's not... Yeah, I'll say he's self-avowed. I'll say he's a self-avowed Nazi. When you see pictures like this on his timeline on the twit, just doing a little light reading on my flight, and he's reading Mein Kampf by Adolf Hitler, or when you see him tweet stuff like this before Mein Kampf, and he was like, a mess, and he was like a thug, quote unquote, as he would put it. After Mein Kampf, wearing a suit, standing behind a jet. He's a Nazi, right? He's coming out and he's saying he's a Nazi on here, effectively. He doesn't like being called a Nazi. And I think he sued somebody over it a while back. But, I feel I'm establishing the facts here. Not for nothing, but he also knows Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, pretty well. He's been on his show like a lot.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. Always love coming on your show.
Kash Patel, thank you so much for making the time to be here with us. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Stu. Appreciate it. See you soon.
I got to go, Kash. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
up against a hard break here. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it, Stu.
Kash Patel, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Stu. Appreciate it. You've got a great show.
Thank you.
So the point is that they know each other, and they've known each other for a long time. A long history of working together. The head of the FBI knows the guy. That's why it's important to talk about him. Check out what happened to him. He was going to speak at a veterans group, and it was canceled, and he is miffed, using slurs and everything. I had to censor them.
I have also been barred today from the Norfolk, Virginia VFW, where the USS Liberty veterans had moved my speech to during the memorial service for their fallen brothers, who again were murdered by Israeli Jews.
Oh boy, we're going down this. Like, I'm disturbed by what Israel is doing in Palestine. I stand for the Palestinians 100%. But Stu Peters isn't in favor of Palestinians. He fucking hates Jews. That's the bottom line with this dude. It's not about, like, war crimes or morality or what, is it good or bad or whatever that they're doing. It is, he just fucking hates Jews. That's what it's about for him. And he always looks for an opportunity to talk about how Jews are blah, 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 puppet masters and all that other shit. He really got famous off of like the QAnon wave very much.
Service for their fallen brothers, who again were murdered by Israeli Jews. The local media, they're now calling up a bunch of to go on the news and cry and kvetch.
Oh my God, dude. What a colossal piece of shit. Seriously. What broke in this guy's head? Throwing around the K-slur for Jews like this. And like, I don't actually know what the other word was that he said, but I hesitate to even repeat it because it might be a slur.
They're now calling up a bunch of to go on the news and cry and kvetch. Get me the closest rabbi. Bring him to me now. We need the rabbi on the news to talk about how dangerous I am, to talk about how prolific of an anti-Semite I am, about how I stand accused of anti-Semitism of the highest order in the eyes of their Talmudic court of injustice.
So what, are you denying that you're anti-Semitic? You can criticize Israel, and I do often, without being anti-Semitic. There's a difference between the state of Israel and Jews. And if you conflate the two, you are effectively, tacitly admitting that it's an apartheid state. It is either a Jewish state or a free, democratic, open state. It cannot be both. Like this, you know, in the United States, if black people were hypothetically, you know, banned from holding office or whatever, we would call that a white nationalist state. We call it an apartheid state if they were separated, like in South Africa. If they were banned from being involved in politics or marrying whites or whatever else, or they had any kind of heavy regulation making their lives more difficult, that would be an apartheid state. We would accept that was wrong, no matter what. The idea that they're calling it a Jewish state, I mean, the far-right nutcases at the top should tell you what you need to know. It's an apartheid state right now. Anyway, the point is that Stu Peters doesn't care about any of that. It's not what it's about. It's all about just hating Jews with him.
Stand accused of anti-Semitism of the...
And I don't understand why he isn't just admitting it after the two pictures that we saw. Let me just establish a little bit more here for you. Check this one out.
I still don't think we should deport all Jewish people.
I don't think we should deport all Jewish people, this dude said.
Jewish people. But,
I'm 2 years ahead of you on that, and in 2 years you'll come back and say, yeah, you were right about that.
You never know.
Yeah, you'll say. I promise you. Just keep listening. Just stick with me here, okay? I'm a little bit ahead of people, just like I was with COVID and the bioweapon, okay?
Oh my God, dude.
I'm a little bit ahead of people here, but yeah, no, we absolutely do need a final solution on that.
Did you hear what he just said? One more time.
Okay, I'm a little bit ahead of people here, but yeah, no, we absolutely do need a final solution on that.
We need a final solution on that. I'm sure people probably already know this, but I'm going to say it anyway in case there's somebody out there who doesn't, who's listening. Statistically, or probably a couple. The final solution was Hitler's plan to murder all of the Jews. You know, Judaism was not viewed as a race as much until Hitler came along and started turning it into a race. And it's not a race. It's an ethnicity, I suppose. I mean, people come from different areas of the world and they practice Judaism. It was a religion, not a race. There are Ashkenazi Jews, mostly European. That's an ethnicity. There are Sephardic Jews, and there are Mizrahi Jews from the Middle East. But those aren't races. Hitler focused heavily on turning it into a race and spreading the idea that if you had one Jewish grandparent, I believe, you were non-Aryan and your blood was poison. And if you mated with somebody who was Aryan as a non-Aryan, you would infect them. They would then be non-Aryan as well. And you're just like a bad person in your heart. It can't be reversed. No matter how good a Jewish person seems, they're just evil in their heart. That's the view that Hitler and the Nazis held. And the view that Stu Peters holds, actually. So Hitler started encouraging Jews to just get out of Germany. They'd been there for hundreds of years, a lot of these little communities. And he was persecuting them, and they were doing, night of broken glass and just making a mess out of everything. Anti-Jewish protests and all of that. And they were like commandeering their property. in claiming that it was to pay back the German state for the damage that the Jews had done to it and all that. And there were conspiracy theories at the time, like Jews were responsible for the loss in World War I because they were in power at the time in Germany, although they weren't. And they were pulling the strings. They weren't. And they were making things, they were trying to topple Germany intentionally. They weren't. It was all conspiracy theory, right? Zionists were a group of people in the region at the time, in the Middle East, Palestine area, who were trying to get Jews to come back to the Israel area. Israel did not exist. And they made a deal with Hitler to basically allow Jews to exit Germany and keep their things, like keep their money, take it with them, and sell their house and stuff and keep all of the money from it as long as they were going to Palestine area. That was the deal that they cut with Hitler. And then there was a point at which it turned from trying to push them out of Germany to locking the doors. He disabled their passports. He stopped allowing them to leave. And that is when he started the final solution. There were concentration camps all the way back in 1933, but the death camps, I mean, the full-blown death camps, they didn't come around until a little bit later. Hitler locks the door and starts sending people to death camps. That was the final solution. And Stu Peters says we need to deport all Jews.
Ahead of people, just like I was with COVID and the bioweapon, okay? I'm a little bit ahead of people
Well, I
here,
was
but
right
yeah,
there
no,
with
we
you on the
absolutely
COVID.
do need a final solution on.
He's a Nazi, right? I don't know how anybody could see it any differently than he is a Nazi. And I can't believe that a VFW of Virginia, veterans, what does that stand for? Veterans what? Veterans of Foreign Wars, VFW. It's like a club. I remember my parents were veterans of the Vietnam War, and there were VFWs around us, and you can go to it. It's like a clubhouse, kind of like the Lions Club. It's a building that you can go to, and you can host parties and things like that. They invited this dude to speak at the VFW. What the... Yeah, and I didn't even touch on the quote-unquote bioweapon that he mentioned. I'm not going to bother. This isn't the subject or the place for it, but he's completely full of all the way down. Check this one out. I just want to establish some of the guy's views for you. And we'll talk about his Nazi views a little bit more in a second, but he's got some white supremacist views too. Check this one out. Black animals get rich for killing white Americans. What a vile thing to say. Oh my God. All right, listen to this. I hope there aren't slurs in this. He likes throwing those out a lot.
This country doesn't have a racism problem. We don't have a gun problem. We don't have a poverty problem that's causing mass violence. What we have here is a black problem. We have a problem with black crime.
Jesus fucking Christ, dude. Look, the thing is, I've said this before. I'm going to say it again for anybody who's new here. There is a disparity between the black community's success in American society and white people's success in American society. Black poverty rate is higher than the white poverty rate. Certain statistic, I think like certain crimes are higher for the black community, like maybe murder is higher for black community. I'm not sure. Like there are some statistics that are higher for black people than for white people. Now that can be the result of one of two things. Either that's happening for some societal reason, something that can be fixed. It's happening because, you know, they've historically been oppressed and they, you know, we need to like rise them up out of poverty. Because of course, poverty is the leading contributing factor that leads to crime in the United States. So it's either that it's a societal problem that can be solved, or it's a genetic problem. They're just genetically like that. And if you believe that, then you would agree with Hitler. That's Hitler's beliefs. That's what set Hitler apart from other people. The fact that he believed that races were inferior to each other genetically, among other things, of course. The point is that about the black poverty rate or the black, you know, crime statistics or whatever doesn't accomplish anything. Instead of about it, we should be trying to rise these communities up and give them opportunities that they don't have, that, you know, their white counterparts do have. about it is solely to signal that you feel that you're superior. That's it. Whether it's intentional, whether you even realize that's what you're doing or why you're doing it, that's what's happening. So he says we have a black problem.
This is a group of people that comprise.
You catch that emphasis on the word people? People, quote unquote. And again, if you notice a little chyron, black animals get rich for killing white Americans. He doesn't view them as people, is the point.
We have a problem with black crime. This is a group of people that comprises 12 to 13% of the entire United States population, but commits more than half of all of its violent crime.
Again, I don't think that statistic's correct. I think he's misstating that. It's one specific subcategory or something. Again, like you can find subcategories of like whatever you want if you look hard enough, but the point is it's either genetic inferiority or it's a societal problem that can be solved. He believes it's just genetic inferiority. That's it.
You're more likely to be murdered by a black woman than you are by a white man.
Again, like he's playing with statistics. It's called P hacking. He's basically cutting the end of the graph off to make it look way different than it actually is, to misrepresent reality.
You're more likely to be murdered by a rich black person than by a poor white.
Okay, you're more likely to be murdered by a rich black person than a poor white person. Are you kidding me with this? Like, a lot of the stuff he says, I feel like there's probably like a grain of truth to it that he's like twisting out of proportion. There's no way there's any grain of truth to this, right? No need to wonder. Just loaded up our question gun. Let's go answer hunting. You claim that you're more likely to be murdered by a rich black person than a poor white person. Is that true in any way? Searching the web. Not supported by credible evidence and reflects a misrepresentation of crime statistics. Crime rates, including homicide, are influenced by a complex interplay of factors such as socioeconomic status, community conditions, and systemic inequalities. That's what I'm talking about. It's either that or you believe that it's genetic inferiority and then you just believe the same things as Hitler. While it's true that historically black individuals have been overrepresented in homicide statistics relative to their population size, this overrepresentation is closely linked to socioeconomic disparities. The myth of black-on-black crime. The term black-on-black crime is often used to perpetuate harmful stereotypes, ignoring that most crimes are intra-racial, meaning they occur within the same racial group. According to data, both black and white individuals are more likely to be victimized by someone of their own race, primarily due to residential segregation and social patterns. The assertion that wealthy black individuals are more likely to commit murder than poor white individuals lacks empirical support and oversimplifies the complex factors contributing to crime. It's essential to approach such claims critically and consider blah, blah, blah. So the point is, no, it's just completely made up.
They are overrepresented in every single criminal statistic you could possibly think of.
That's just not true. It's just a lie. It's a flat out, bald-faced lie.
It's unsustainable. Yet it shows no signs of stopping. And as the Carmelo Anthony saga and all of these other cases play out, you can rest assured we're going to see more violence. We're going to see more viral news stories. We're going to see more black victimhood. We're going to see more attacks on whites. And that's not fear-mongering. That's just the truth. It's time that we have a national conversation about the problem that we have with blacks.
Point is that he knows Kash Patel very well. Had him on his show a lot. He is a full-blown Nazi, in my personal opinion, and he is way too close to power for my comfort. Now, I mentioned earlier that this guy sues people when they call him a Nazi, right? Let me establish what I'm talking about and show you why he would have lost the lawsuit if it actually went anywhere or if it wasn't dropped. I don't actually know what happened with the lawsuit. Listen to this, though. He was on Fresh and Fit. It was Fresh and Fit. So I knew it was something about gaining something or other. Yeah. Anyway, he's on Fresh and Fit right now with Myron Gaines and this other dude. I don't remember his name.
Yesterday, Newsweek called me a pro-Hitler Nazi.
Raw Story called me a pro-Hitler Nazi. I don't know how these people get away. I mean, they said that I was a Holocaust denier.
Oh, obviously.
Which is completely false, emphatically false. As a matter of fact, they made up a quote out of whole cloth and said, Stu Peters said, quote, Hitler is a hero.
Boy, would it be embarrassing if I happened to have a copy of that exact line, wouldn't it? If I had a video of him saying those words, that would be super embarrassing.
I have never said any such thing. And they can print this stuff with impunity because the hubris is so, because there's no accountability.
Yep.
And so they did this as a result of me announcing the Extreme Accountability event.
Okay.
And that's what we are going to, before I take my last breath, we're going to exact extreme accountability on these people for what they're doing to our kids.
Yeah, he's talking about transing the kids, quote unquote. The extreme accountability thing is a different subject, but it was a conference that he organized that was gigantic that kept getting canceled because the venues find out who he is and they don't want a full-blown Hitler-loving Nazi holding an event at which he says he's going to, I'm quoting him, hang people from ropes until they are dead. People being anybody involved in COVID or supporting the COVID hoax, quote unquote, senators, congressmen, whoever. Biden is included in that. That was his goal, the Extreme Accountability Conference. Anyway, I think he ended up holding it, and it was just radical, insane nonsense. But so he says he never said Hitler was a hero, right? I present you with this clip. I think this is the right one.
Nazis were fighting against perverts and pedophiles.
No, they weren't, but okay.
And some of those acts, including those Nazi book burnings, as they're called, were heroic acts. You see, the National Socialists, they promised a return to normalcy.
Yeah, there's actually, I watched this entire episode of his on air, and it was wild. But they promised a return to normalcy? Are you kidding me? There's a picture of Magnus Hirschfeld. He was famously gay and ran the Berlin Institute of Sexology or something like that. He was very trans-affirming. He had a repository of like a lot of books and pictures on sexual subjects, and the Nazis came in and destroyed it, poured red ink all over everything, destroyed picture frames and busts and burned and everything. It was, it was ugly. So the point is, he did say Hitler is a hero, right?
And some of those acts, including those Nazi book burnings, as they're called, were heroic acts.
Is that not him saying that Hitler was a hero? This isn't even the only instance of it. I have multiple clips of him saying, wasn't Hitler a hero for blah, blah, blah? Couldn't be clearer, seems to me. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. This guy has problems. He's like an unhinged Alex Jones. I can't believe him saying those words. He is an unhinged Alex Jones. Tell me your thoughts.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
Donald Trump invoked the Insurrection Act, which is what we were afraid of. He has declared martial law in LA, specifically, under the pretext of there are rioting and looting happening right now in LA, and it needs to be stopped. Now, what that means, the Insurrection Act being filed, that is that Donald Trump deputizes the National Guard, takes authority over them, which is usually reserved for the states. The states control the National Guard. It is the state's military. This is what it meant when the Constitution said well-regulated militia necessary to the free state and all of that. It was the National Guard it was referring to. Trump took the National Guard and ordered 2,000 troops into LA in full military gear to deal with protesters. And I mean protesters. I don't mean rioters and looters. There's no rioting and looting going on. I'm in this subreddit called Doomer Circle Jerk, is what it's called. And it's like this right-wing nutcase sphere, this little echo chamber, where they're always talking about how the left wants a civil war and it's about to happen any second when there's no civil war coming and they're full of it. It's just wild. Anyway, the people in there had no idea that anything was even happening. Like this morning, they had no idea this was going on. To my understanding, I believe that ICE did some raids in California, like in LA, and it made people very unhappy and led to this kind of thing right here. Some kid was throwing rocks or something. I'm not sure what it is, actually. It doesn't look like a rock because it's shattering into pieces when it hits. Maybe it is rocks. I don't know. Anyways, throwing something, rocks, I guess, at these cars, at these ICE vehicles. They're ICE and Homeland Security vehicles, and he's throwing them at the cars. The twig and berries on somebody to do this, right? Oh my God. God, they're not even twig and berries at this point, right? They're apple and branch. Anyway, so I guess that they formed a human chain around the immigration center, to my understanding. Like, people, like, locked arms and formed a chain around it. So Donald Trump sent in the National Guard with weapons. I think it's less lethal rounds, not non-lethal rounds. They're less lethal rounds. You get shot with it, you could still die from it. It's just not as likely. Like rubber bullets and stuff, for example. It is a war zone, not because of the people, but because Trump declared martial law. And on top of all of that, Pete Hegseth says, like, when it's leading up to this, the violent mob assaults on ICE and federal law enforcement are designed to prevent the removal of criminal illegal aliens from our soil. A dangerous invasion facilitated by criminal cartels, aka foreign terrorist organizations, and a huge national security risk. This is all delusion, of course. Under President Trump, violence and destruction against federal agents and federal facilities will not be tolerated. It's common sense. And here's where it gets real. The Department of Defense is mobilizing the National Guard immediately to support federal law enforcement in Los Angeles. Again, that's declaring martial law and deputizing the National Guard with the Insurrection Act. You're not supposed to do this unless there is a full civil war, unless you're in wartime. It's a wartime power. And then he says, if violence continues, active duty Marines at Camp Pendleton will also be mobilized. They're on high alert. You can't use U.S. military within the borders of the United States. You can't do that. You use the National Guard within the borders of states, and the states move those around. The federal government has no military power within states. None. And they're doing it anyway. They have taken authority from states. Now, where are all the states' rights people again? Haven't heard a word from Marjorie Taylor Greene. Marjorie Mrs. States' Rights Taylor Greene. All she talks about when it's convenient, and then suddenly forgets what states' rights even means. Doesn't realize it's a term that people use when it's inconvenient. When Trump got elected, people worried he would declare martial law. He did it. To stop protest, he declared martial law and sent military into cities to impose martial order on them with the Insurrection Act. This is what everybody feared would happen. It has happened. I know that Trump ordered 2,000 National Guard in. I heard that only 300 showed up. I'm not sure what the deal was with that, if they only needed 300 or what. Yeah, it was only 300. Only 300 actually arrived and were stationed in key federal locations around the city. I think it was a deployment readiness thing. Yeah, so a full contingent was called into federal service, but only a fraction were actually moved to LA, a common pattern when commanders reassess actual needs on site. Commanders. They are literally using the military against U.S. citizens now. Say, remember when MAGA land fearmongered about Obama and Biden declaring martial law? In fact, I do remember that. Less than lucid, yes, I do. This is literally crushing protest with military personnel. This couldn't possibly be a worse situation. Anyway, Reuters wrote about it. Trump deploys National Guard at Los Angeles protests against immigration agents continue. Okay, that was oddly worded. Whatever. Los Angeles, President Trump's administration says it would deploy 2,000 National Guard troops on Saturday as federal agents in LA faced off against a few hundred demonstrators during a second day of protests following immigration raids. You catching those words? Those specific words used? Demonstrators, protests following immigration raids. There was no need for military to come in. In fact, all the way up the chain, everybody said, we've got it. We're fine. Thank you. We don't need your help. This is an escalation. You know, people who are in like a, you know, in a an adversarial situation with each other. One person says something that maybe they don't really mean, and then the next person responds to it because they're angry and they respond in an angry way. And then the other person responded, it just keeps spiraling out of control. This is escalating. This is getting bigger. This is getting more out of control as time goes on. And this is how, I don't think that's what's happening here, but this is how civil wars start, is by runaway escalation. One side does this thing and the other side does that thing. And then, you know, it just winds up into insanity until the next thing you know, like people are arming themselves and forming like regiments and stuff. This is not good. Trump says, great job by the National Guard in Los Angeles after 2 days of violence, clashes, and unrest. We have an incompetent governor, Newsome, and mayor, Bass, who were, as usual, just look at how they handled the fires, and now they're very slow permitting disaster. Oh my God. Federal permitting is complete. He writes in such a confusing way. Who were, as usual, unable to handle the task. These radical left protests by instigators and often paid troublemakers will not be tolerated. Also, from now on, masks will not be allowed to be worn at protests. Why do these people have to hide? And why, again, thank you, National Guard, for a job well done. I'm sorry, what do these people have to hide and why? Again, thank you, National Guard, for a job well done. Yeah, I hear that. What do people have to hide who wear masks, right? Yeah, what do people who wear masks have to hide exactly, I wonder? One can only guess. For the audio audience, I'm looking at a picture of ICE officials wearing masks. This particular ICE official has a Nazi tattoo. The Valknot, as they call it. The Valknot, or Knot of the Slain, is an Old Norse symbol that often represented the afterlife in carvings and designs. Often considered a symbol of the Norse god Odin, which was, he was a big deal, Odin was, in Nazi Germany. He was a symbol of power for the Nazis. Some white supremacists, particularly racist Odinists, have appropriated the Valknot to use as a racist symbol. Anyway, why are these people wearing masks? What do they have to hide? They're federal agents. These people are vile, man. The military and the National Guard are legally different entities. In effect, on the ground, it looks the same, but legally it's different. Check out Knitting Cult Lady to learn more. I appreciate that. Yeah. They are different entities, but they're basically like states' militaries, right? Not the federal military. And usually they're running around and servicing rather than fighting, like giving water to people if there's a natural disaster and helping like build things and stuff. But they are definitely different entities for sure. And
The bottom line, though, is that they look identical to the military at this moment, wearing their gear. A. And B. Hegseth is ready to send Marines in anyway, like actual military. Not good at all. Okay, live updates from New York Times. National Guards to deploy to LA as more protests are planned. Governor Gavin Newsom of California sharply criticized Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, who said the active duty Marines could be mobilized as part of the federal government's response to protests against immigration raids in the LA area. Mr. Hegseth's suggestion came on Saturday after President Trump ordered at least 2,000 National Guard members to assist immigration agents following 2 days of clashes with demonstrators. Some of the demonstrations have been unruly, but local officials had not asked for federal assistance, and Mr. Trump issued the order under a rarely used law to bypass Mr. Newsom's authority. Senator Markwayne Mullin, oh my God, that guy's a nutcase, Republican of Oklahoma, defended President Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard to the Los Angeles area. Speaking on CNN's State of the Union, Mullin characterized the protesters as illegals who were attacking law enforcement. Mullin compared the unrest to the LA riots in 1992, but claimed that this time California's governor is not working with the president. The LA Police Department detained a number of protesters near the Metropolitan Detention Center in downtown Los Angeles on Saturday, but said demonstrations in the city were peaceful. It's 7 a.m. in LA and the streets are quiet, but more protests are expected later today. The Trump administration's top law enforcement official in Southern California said last night that National Guard troops would arrive in LA County within 24 hours. And they did, as we saw. Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont has criticized Trump's decision to deploy the National Guard to LA. The mayor of the city of Los Angeles did not request a National Guard, but he thinks that he has a right to do anything he wants, Sanders told CNN's State of the Union. On Sunday, Sanders said he believed the president was taking the country down a path to authoritarianism. Oh, absolutely. The future of this country rests with a small number of Republicans in the House and Senate who know better, he added. Jesus Christ. This is why countrywide protests are needed, 100%. I understand that there's a big protest planned for June 14th, I believe. Down a path, we're here, baby. Yeah, exactly. We're here. Paramount, a site of protest, has a large Latino community. Burning pallets. National Guard to arrive in LA within 24 hours. Jesus, dude. This is just not good. This is bad. Very, very bad. And, I don't know how to stop this. I don't know how to fix it. There's no way to fix it. We have to protest. We have to fight back. We have to not sit down and accept it. And I said this before. I'm going to say it again, and maybe it's putting me in the line of fire, but it's time to start hiding people, really. It's time to start hiding people. They never knew when that moment was right in Germany. Well, it's right. Now. It's here. Anyway, yeah, tell me what you think about it in the comments. It's about as disturbing as it gets, man, for real. We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
Tom, explain to my viewers, though, that if we allow the 18 to 20 million just to stay here that Joe and Kamala let in, it would cost this nation trillions down the road.
It's just delusion, complete delusion all the way down. 18 to 20 million is the total number of immigrants in the country, not undocumented immigrants, not people that crossed the border, people that live here and got temporary status of temporary residency or permanent residency or full-blown citizens that immigrated here from other countries. Europe, Asia, Australia, Africa, everywhere. 18 to 20 million total. So that is 6% of the country. You tell me you're going to deport 6% of the country, and you think that all of those people are like leeches that are sucking the country dry of resources? That's not happening. Okay, most of these people are productive, tax-paying members of society. Not that it matters. In my mind, we should take care of our tired, our poor, our huddled masses, like the Statue of Liberty says. But this is just delusion all the way down from these people.
That Joe and Kamala let in, it would cost this nation trillions down the road. So why not spend a few billion now to get rid of them? Not to mention,
it would cost trillions to get rid of them, not just in the cost of deporting people, but in the economic benefit they provide. The more people who are part of an economy, the larger that economy, the larger the gross domestic product, the more spending is taking place.
the security risk and the crime and the drugs and the guns.
Well, look, first of all, I don't put a price on national security. You said it before.
Amen.
You can't have strong national security if you don't have border security. We need to know who's coming in, what's coming in, where's coming in, why.
Yeah, we do actually know all of those answers. We do. It is a bad thing to shrink our economy by deporting people. It's bad economically. It's a violent, ugly thing to do. Tearing families apart, sending them to war-torn areas. I mean, the Trump regime tried to, I don't know if they succeeded, they may have, tried to start shipping people who were asylum seekers, refugees for political persecution and stuff, tried to ship them to Libya, which is at like a level 4 travel advisory. There's a civil war there right now. There is no government, dropping them literally in a war zone that they and we have no stake in at all. That's just cruelty for cruelty's sake. Cruelty is the point.
Kind of all those things, right? So I don't put a price on national security, but look, the big, beautiful bill, it's a big number for border security, but it's a one-time cost. You know, secure the border and run this deportation operation. But the big...
They're showing the El Salvadorian concentration camp. Fucking disgusting.
Millions of dollars we're currently spending on, you know, the millions of illegal aliens here, whether it's schools, hospitals, social services, food banks. I can go on and on, you know, the billions of dollars that we're spending in perpetuity.
Yep.
For illegal aliens.
Now, first of all, there aren't 18 to 20 million illegal aliens. That's immigrants in the United States total, I believe. How many immigrants were in the U.S. total in, I don't know, I'm looking for a stable year because COVID wasn't very stable. And then the whole Trump thing wasn't very stable. 2019, before COVID. It went up and it went down and changed. Okay, it looks like actually there are 45 million immigrants total, defined as foreign-born individuals living in the U.S. 14% of the country. Is that right? I can't trust this. No, I don't think that's right. I can't tell. It's so hard to find data on this, like data that's trustworthy, because it's all coming from like the Trump regime's like websites and stuff. Anyway, the situation is significantly different than they're portraying, obviously.
Welfare and you know all these social services that are meant for tax-paying U.S. citizens, it's going to be a cost savings to American people over time.
I mean, you know that immigrants, undocumented and otherwise, also pay taxes, right?
So yeah, we got to invest in the beginning because this will be a short-term cost, but it's going to save us billions of dollars in long-term costs because the other costs are in perpetuity unless we get rid of them.
No, it's actually going to cost money, like a lot, to the economy to remove them. It's just vile, the lies that these people spew. Check this one out, Steve Bannon.
Why isn't the House bringing up more legislation? You know, the Speaker, where you at, Mike? Bringing up more bills so that we can codify everything Trump's doing. Because God forbid, Steve, a Democrat president gets in 4 years, they'll just undo everything.
Dan, what I think is actually a higher priority, even in codification of what he's doing legislatively on so many important things, is we got to codify the cuts that Doge either found or didn't find under his Article 2 powers. If they're not prepared to back
Doge did not have Article anything powers to do what they did, first of all. And second, they cut almost no money, but they destroyed America's soft power in the world and a whole bunch of other goodwill programs and, you know, saving lives and research for cancer and child cancer research and kicking people off of Social Security who didn't deserve it, who were just like normal people doing their thing. Absolutely fucking disgusting. To save what? According to Elon Musk, $160 billion. $160 billion. As opposed to the $4.2 trillion in taxes that Donald Trump just cut. Just did it. 4.2 trillion in tax cuts compared to Musk's 160 billion. Great. So glad he did that. Destroy America's soft power for nothing.
Rescissions, and they're not prepared to codify the at least the waste and the fraud that Doge says they found.
That Doge says they found. They didn't find any, is the thing. They have literally no proof.
Then we ought to go to impoundments and get it, but we got to get it at the American people that this stuff was found, that actually Doge had a productive life.
So he said, go to impoundments. It kind of slipped by there. What he's referencing is the fact that it is illegal for the president to not disperse money that Congress has promised or whatever, that they created, like, congressionally created programs. They congressionally created U.S. aid and said they need to do this thing and that thing. They have line items in the bills and everything, and it's been funded by Congress this whole time. Impoundments say Trump does not have the right to cancel out what Congress does. They have the power of the purse, period. So he's saying we need to get rid of impoundments or whatever. He's saying the president should take control of everything, become a full dictator, is what that means.
Chief executive officer of the United States government. That means he can impound money if he thinks programs have been done or not meeting their goals, and he can let go fire personnel.
No, it literally does not mean that. He's the chief leader in the government for one branch. Mike Johnson is a representative for another branch. And I'm not sure who the speaker of, or I'm not sure who the majority leader is in the Senate right now, but the point is each branch has its own responsibilities, and the executive branch's responsibility is to fulfill the expectations of the legislative branch. You can't just not spend money that they appropriated for things.
One. Number two, he's commander-in-chief of the armed forces. If he wants to deport people and his commander-in-chief, under his commander-in-chief who are illegal aliens, he can deport them.
So he's saying there's no accountability because he controls the military. That's what that means.
Number three, he's the chief magistrate and the chief law enforcement officer.
Who the f told you that?
This is what they're fighting. And guess what? They are winning to the degree that to delay is to deny. And they realize this is a holding action.
Are they in the room with us right now, Steve? Democrats are not winning anything right now, unfortunately.
But right now, it's the only thing the radical Democrats have. And in their perspective, it's working because it's slowing down President Trump.
Right.
This is why it's a constitutional crisis right now.
It's a constitutional crisis because Democrats are fulfilling their constitutional oath by preventing Trump from breaking his. And they're not even successfully preventing him. So Trump isn't allowed to break his oath. And that is a constitutional crisis because he's not allowed to. Are you kidding me? Steve Bannon is like one of the most vile human beings on planet Earth, honestly. What's this one?
Harvard students are mad about losing a $3 billion grant, but their Ivy League schools already got a $53 billion endowment.
Harvard students are not upset about that. If you're unaware of this situation, Trump has decided to challenge Harvard. He told Harvard to fire people that he wanted fired and hire people that he wanted hired and change their curriculum, change the way that they teach, the things that they teach, change, everything. Change the makeup of their student body. And they said no, which is the right thing to do because fascists always want more. By capitulating to and appeasing fascists, like for example, like Hitler, by just giving him what he wanted and saying, fine, take it. He isn't going to stop. He's going to keep punching you in the nose until he has literally everything that you have, that he wants. There is no middle ground with fascists. They refuse to meet in the middle. They're going to take it all. So take the nose punch right now and don't give an inch. Harvard decided to do that. They're not giving an inch, which I respect the hell out of. But that means that Harvard is losing grants, not for students, but for research, like cancer research and stuff. That's not hurting Harvard. That's hurting us, like the taxpayers. And Trump is doing it to create, to give himself power solely. Aside from that, Harvard has a lot of money, billions. As this person said, 53 billion in endowments. I don't know if that's true, but it's a lot. But as with most nonprofits, the way it operates is they have, say, $1 billion in the bank, and that $1 billion is invested in, funds. It's invested in companies and Google and Netflix and every index stocks, and it gains interest every year. So you got $1 billion, right? And you're gaining, say, 2% interest every year on that. You're gaining $20 million a year. And that's what Harvard uses to fund their operations, to pay their professors, to run their buildings, to pay for utilities and fund programs and all that other stuff. That's what they use. So the money is not growing with interest. It's staying static because they're taking the interest that it earns and paying their bills with it. By taking that funding away, that $3 billion in funding, Trump is just hurting us. That's it.
Students are mad about losing a $3 billion grant, but their Ivy League schools already got a $53 billion endowment. Let's break it down. Harvard's endowment is the biggest in the world. In 2024, it shelled out $2.4 billion, funding 37% of their budget. That's $749 million for financial aid, including $250 million for undergrads. Sounds like they're doing just fine.
It sounds like that, but that's a complete misrepresentation of everything. Like if somebody told you they make $100,000 a year, that's not $100,000 that they have up front all right now in their pocket. That's spread out over the course of a year, and it all has to go to like paying rent and utilities and paying a car payment and school supplies and whatever other you have to pay for in life. Childcare and everything. They have to pay for stuff. This isn't just like money that they just had in their pocket and they're spending it because they want to. This is what propaganda is.
So again, why are they whining over $3 billion? Apparently over 80% of their endowment is locked up by donors for specific pet projects.
You mean invested? You mean the money is invested in the stock market? You mean it's gaining interest and they're using that interest to pay? Are you serious with this? This is how it works. This is how nonprofit organizations operate. The people that produced this have to know that. They can't possibly not know that. You cannot convince me that they looked all of these facts up and had no idea that this is how it works.
In 2017, the White Coat Waste Project exposed Harvard's use of $900,000 in taxpayer funds to modify mice genes, suppressing serotonin to test for increased aggression. Mice?
Are you serious? Do you have any idea how valuable scientific studies like that are? There's a famous video. I don't know if you guys have seen it. We're going to watch it. This is the kind of thing that religious nutcases do. They take things out of context and then laugh about it. There's a study that scientists were doing to figure out how much shrimp are affected by certain bacteria in the ocean so that they could know like which bacteria were harmful to shrimp so that they could, there are all kinds of useful things for this. Like which bacteria are the most damaging to certain plant and animal life, so on and so forth, right? Well, that got twisted into this funny little video here. The point is, it's funny to see a shrimp running on a treadmill underwater, but there was an actual purpose to this. It's funny to laugh about Harvard giving mice serotonin. There's a reason for this. They're not just doing this because they like dosing animals with. There's a point.
Don't share our genes. So that's wonderful news. Losing this grant might mean less cash for their woke initiatives or bloated administrative costs.
Like what woke initiatives? Harvard woke?
So maybe, just maybe, it's time for Harvard to tighten its belt and actually prioritize what really matters instead of relying on government handouts. Remember,
they're not government handouts. The government is paying Harvard for a service. It's a contract. They're contracting with them.
Grants are not entitlements. You're not owed anything, even if you're the top school in America.
Just complete propaganda all the way down. It is wild to see the degree of propaganda on this website, on these reels. One American News. Jesus Christ, dude. Anyway, tell me what you think about it in the comments. That's just wild.
We'll be right back. Don't forget to check out my Patreon. Also, take a look at my website, owenmorgan.com. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon.
Dave Mustaine, a lot of people know he's an ex-Jehovah's Witness. A lot of people don't know that, I suppose. He talked about his experience with Jehovah's Witnesses, and it just resonated with me hard, being an ex-Jehovah's Witness myself. Check this out, what he had to say. Oh, by the way, if you don't know, he's a singer of Megadeth, the creator of Megadeth. He was a guitarist in Metallica for a couple of years, I think in the 80s. He's the generally.
4 years old, your parents separate. How many siblings do you have?
I have 3. Debbie is 3 years older than me, and the other 2 were 15 and 18 years older than me and are both deceased.
Yeah, 15 years older, 18 years older. And Debbie was 3. So 4 kids, all Jehovah's Witnesses, I believe.
Were you close with them?
The oldest one, yeah, but after a while, because they were following the guidelines of their religion, and I was supposedly a worldly person, and they did what their religion calls for. I was disfellowshipped, not officially, but basically I was not allowed to be around anybody.
He was worldly. So I guess he wasn't baptized is my guess here. He wasn't baptized, but as somebody that was very clearly like not a part of the religion anymore, but who did grow up in it, going knocking on doors and everything, as he gets into in a second. You're effectively disfellowshipped, right? Like people just, they view you as dirty. I remember this. I knew a kid named Randall when I was younger who didn't come to many meetings. Every now and then he would come. He was my age, like 12 or something. And he was viewed as dirty. He was viewed as dirty. Just to be around him, you didn't want to shake his hand. It might rub off on you because he didn't come to the meetings very frequently. And because his mom was depressed, had clinical diagnosed depression that she struggled with really hard. And it was like an open known thing that she talked about. Like she talked about it publicly. And people in the congregation, they just kind of felt like she wasn't leaning on Jehovah enough because she wasn't coming to the meetings. And that's why she was depressed. That's how you're viewed. If you're not like a hardcore all-in believer, shows up to every meeting, knocks on the doors every single week and all of that stuff, you're viewed as dirty. I'm sorry to say, unrelated, Randall skipped school at about 14 years old, with another kid named Justin, and they went over to the Ohio River, and they were swimming in the Ohio River, and they swam near a barge, and the barge was kind of going up and down, and it sucked them under, and they drowned, both of them. That didn't make things better for his mom or his dad. But they were still Jehovah's Witnesses, and they stuck to it even harder after that, to my understanding.
Couldn't come to meetings. I couldn't go to witnesses' houses and stuff like that. And I didn't care because I hated that religion.
Yeah, but it's everybody you ever knew or loved in there. So you can not care. I certainly don't. But it still gets you, you know? I don't care to hang out with Jehovah's Witnesses, but that was like everything. Like these are the people that I grew up with. You know, when my parents were destitute, didn't have money for school supplies, the congregation got together and like bought me a backpack for school that year. I was using the backpack that they got me. And now those people will never talk to me again for the rest of my life. See them in the store, they'll lock eyes with me and they'll look away and they won't look at me again like I'm a ghost. It sucks. For real.
His houses and stuff like that. And I didn't care because I hated that religion.
So were you, I mean, my editor and good friend grew up as a Jehovah's Witness, and then, I don't know if you would call it escaped it, but...
Yeah, I would.
That's what I call it, escaped it, because it sounds very extremely cultish.
Yeah.
And they have destroyed his relationship with his son and the rest of his family.
That shit is wrong. You know, when You can take everything away from human beings, everything. You can take away my food and my bed and my house and my everything, but taking away relationships is another thing entirely. Putting people in jail is a punishment, but putting people in solitary confinement is a punishment when you're being punished. Being separated from the people that you know and love in your life is evil. They know, Jehovah's Witnesses leadership, that they can't put you in prison legally. They can't do that. Scientology would certainly try, right? But Jehovah's Witnesses can't put you in prison. So what do? They lock you out of everybody else's little prison that they're in. It's just wrong.
And the rest of his family did you get sucked into the religion?
No, I didn't like it. I'm a kid. I want to watch cartoons, man. I don't want to go to church.
Absolutely.
And when they would say, okay, not only are you going to go out to church, but on the other day on the weekend, you're going to go out and knock on strangers' doors and try and sell them that they don't want, right? There's people that the houses you knock on the doors probably have the same outlook I do. I don't want to be bothered on Sunday because I'm scratching my belly in my pajamas and I'm watching.
Okay, that was an unexpectedly wholesome statement, scratching my belly in my pajamas. I thought it was going a totally different direction. Okay, you were doing what?
Probably have the same outlook I do. I don't want to be bothered on Sunday because I'm scratching my belly in my pajamas and I'm watching, college sports. So, that kind of a thing, to me, it just sucked. And then having the holidays taken away, not being able to hang out with friends. You make friends in school and then they say, hey, you want to come over? Oh, I can't. Why? Because my mom's nuts.
Yeah, same happened to me, man, for real. I used to ride my bike down to this dude's house. He was like 2 stops past me on the bus. And dude's name was Patrick. I used to ride my little yellow bike down to his house. Used to have a VCR he would tape Pokemon because it aired 30 minutes before we get out of school. So I go down there on my bike and we'd sit in his living room and we'd watch the episode of Pokemon together. Until one day my parents followed me, found my bike out there in the yard, came and got me, and I didn't have a bike anymore. You can't do something so simple as going to somebody's house for 30 minutes to watch a TV show. It's banned. It's just wrong. The that they do to people's heads it's immoral, it's wrong, it's evil. Seriously.
Michelle, the oldest one, she actually was not one of the witnesses for a very long time. She actually went into witchcraft. That's where I learned my witchcraft from, was my oldest sister, Michelle.
Oh, yeah. He thinks that he's a little bit of a nutcase. He got into religion pretty heavily in the mid-2000s, I think, and it heavily reflected in his music. I'm a huge fan of Megadeth, have been for a very long time. Every song that they wrote, pretty much, every album was about war in some way. Until then, I think Cryptic Writings was the name of the album. It started to get like a lot more religious. But he believed, like, his entire life, apparently, especially after he left, that he was capable of, like, hexing people, casting spells and things. And come on, man. It's just ridiculous nonsense. Unfortunately, I think he's kind of a right-wing nutcase a little bit, but mad respect for getting out of Jehovah's Witnesses and sticking up to them. Seriously.
Oh. And then she somehow got,
FYI, I think Cryptic Writings, the album, was just top tier. It was actually very good, despite like the religious undertones. Really, really good album, actually. Solid riffs.
Somehow got, re-recruited and she ended up being a witness again at the end. And she would talk to me, but it was like kind of like an aunt kind of thing. And then my
yeah, it was, I imagine, very distant is what he's saying, right? 100% get it. Yeah. I don't think my sister is like that anymore. She's not even a member of the religion, but when she was a member of the religion, it was like that. It was like an aunt, just kind of distant. Talk to her every now and then type of deal, and just kind of avoid religion as a topic, mostly. That's the best you get. If they decide to talk to you, that's the best you get. Just sad.
A sister that was younger than her, the one that was 15 years older than me, she didn't want to have anything to do with me. She just died, and even though she was awful to me, I did the right thing and paid for her to go to hospice and paid for a nurse to be with them. You know, for me, I work really hard for my money, and it was for anybody else, it would have been a difficult decision. You know, if I would have thought about, this is the sister who's treated you like your entire life. Why are you going to do this? And it ain't about what she thinks. It's about what God thinks, you know. What am I doing the right thing with what I'm getting given? You know, my funds, my gifts. You know, it can be used for very bad stuff.
Was that a...
Damn, dude, that is really respectable as fucking right? Dude says he took care of his Jehovah's Witness sister even though she didn't talk to him. Goes to hospice, paid for a nurse. Wow, man, that's really interesting. I'm trying to think to myself, would I do that if like my mom needed hospice? Would I pay for hospice care or whatever, a nurse? And I think the answer is yes. You know, at the end of my dad's life, though he was just terrible to me growing up and afterward, especially afterward, despite that fact, I was still willing to pay for like a nursing home, like a nice nursing home for him. He refused to be in a nursing home. He died in a little tiny trailer with carpet that had been worn down so that you're now walking on the floorboards, and it was just full of trash, and he was alone. Just him and his little dog, Edison. That's it. He died there. When he could have died in a decent old folks home, like a decent place where they take care of him and they make sure he's taking medicine and all that other stuff. He didn't want that. He wanted to live with one of us kids. And I just said, no, that's not happening. The point is, I was willing to pay for that for him, despite how he treated me. I think I would do the same for my mom, and not because of God, the big man upstairs, as old Dave Mustaine said, but because it would feel like the right thing to me. Not that there's any obligation. I don't think that it would be immoral to have nothing to do with my mom even after she goes into hospice. But if she was destitute and I had the money for it, I might pay for it despite how she's treated me all these years, you know. That's pretty respectable.
You know, it can be used for very bad stuff.
Was that a tough decision for you?
To help my sister try to pass into the next world. You know, I thought she, being a Jehovah's Witness, would be so eager to get into heaven, you know.
Well, that's not exactly how it works with Jehovah's Witnesses, but, you know, he said that he left early, so I guess he probably didn't follow the doctrine. Jehovah's Witnesses think you're just going to die, and that's it. And you're just going to be asleep. And when you wake up, you're going to be in the new system, God's paradise on earth. Garden of Eden 2.0. The only people that go to heaven are 144,000 special chosen people who just know, you know, God spoke to them in their hearts and in their minds. And he said, you're the guy. You're going to be the one. You're the guy, gal, or not non-binary pal, but guy or gal at the very least. 144,000 in all of human history are going to heaven in Jehovah's Witnesses' minds, and they're going to be given heaven swords and sent to earth to slay the evil people during Armageddon. Anyway, the vast majority of people just going to go to sleep and wake up in the new system is the point.
I mean, I don't understand the concept of heaven, so
It's interesting. I wonder what religion he is a part of then.
Concept of heaven, so I would have thought she would have said, you know, chuck this old body, man, I'm out of here. But, you know, she fought and fought and fought and fought and fought and fought and fought. And finally, the government out in California put her into hospice. You know, I'd been paying for a very long time for a nurse for her. You know, when people wonder what I spend my money on, that was a lot of it. Was paying for my sister's transition into death.
Damn, man. That's a respectable thing to spend money on, right? Dude could have spent it on coke or heroin or whatever celebrities were doing at the time. He could have spent it on political campaigns. He could have spent it on gambling. Instead, he spent it on another human being. And I can respect that. I can respect that a lot. He spent it on something that he would never see a return for. He knew he was never going to get a return, emotionally or otherwise. He knew he wasn't getting the money back, of course. Didn't expect it back. But he knew he wasn't going to get her to ever talk to him again. She's just going to die, and that's it. That is some respectable right there. That seems to me, right? I have heard that he's a right-wing nutcase, that he's like a Trump, like a MAGA-Potamian, if you will. I don't know that for sure, but that is some respectable. Tell me what you think about it in the comments.
That's all I've got for you. If you like what I do and you want to see me continue to do it, don't forget to check me out on Patreon. I just finished writing a book titled Was Hitler an Atheist? It talks about religions during the Third Reich and how they work together. Catholics, Jehovah's Witnesses, and Protestants. And I even address the lies told by the evangelical world about Bonhoeffer. It's on Audible and Amazon. Okay, thanks for watching, guys.